Welcome, everybody. This is Spirituality Adventures, a place where we talk about spirituality. Today, we're going to be talking about recovery in spirituality. And I want to thank you for joining us. And I have Jenn Rogers that is joining in the conversation today. Thank you, Jenn, for coming and hanging out at Spirituality Adventures.
Well, thanks for asking me.
We are in a series called Recovery in Spirituality. And what I'm thinking about in recovery is basically things that people get addicted to. And I'm not necessarily even talking about hardcore addiction. I'm talking about drugs, alcohol, but also food addictions that people can have. I'm also thinking about like behavioral addictions, like getting addicted to social media or shopping or any number of behavioral issues that people deal with today. And so my thought in having you as a guest is I was thinking about moms who are going through COVID and career women who are going through COVID and just the stresses that are kind of related to that and how we can be sort of challenged in those new stressors to turn to things that aren't so healthy for us. So thanks for coming. I would like to first just have you share a little bit about your background so that our listeners can, just get a feel for who you are and tell us where you grew up and kind of give us a little background.
Okay. So I was born in Missouri, in Kirksville, Missouri, where Truman State is. And my parents divorced when I was 6, and we moved to Colorado Springs. My dad moved to St. Louis. So I have 2 older brothers. They're 1 year and 5 years older than me. And then my dad went on and remarried and had 2 more daughters. So I have 2 younger sisters. And I lived in Colorado Springs for most of my life, graduated from high school there, and then came back to Missouri and went to Mizzou for undergrad. That's where I met my husband. And so we dated all through undergrad. We got married 2 weeks after graduation at the tender age of 22.
Yay.
I know, really young. And then I went on and started graduate school that next fall and worked through my master's degree. And then he was finishing school.
What was your master's degree in?
So I have an undergraduate degree in Spanish with a minor in business. And then I got my master's in Spanish linguistics and second language acquisition.
Oh, wow.
So, we moved to Kansas City. He started medical school here in 99. Our first daughter was born in 1998, and then we moved in 99. And I started my teaching job here at Metropolitan Community College.
Okay.
So I teach Spanish there and coordinate the world language program at the Blue River campus.
All right.
So this is my 21st year there.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Man.
So my husband graduated from medical school. We had 3 more daughters. So if you're doing the math out there listening, that's a total of 4 daughters. Yes, they're all girls.
Right.
So we have 4 daughters. Now they are 22, 19, almost 14, and 11. So college, 2 in college and 2 in middle school.
Wonderful daughters.
Yeah, they're pretty awesome. So then my husband went on to residency. He's a pediatrician, and I'm still chugging away teaching and trying to hold down the home front.
Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was trying to remember when I met your husband, Scott, and I'm pretty sure it was over 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think it was around 2007, maybe. We moved to the Northland in 2007, so maybe 2008 at the latest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember getting a phone call from Scott, and he had heard about a pastor who rode bicycles.
Yeah.
And so somebody
Two
gave
of his
him,
favorite things.
Right. Somebody gave him my cell phone number, and he calls me up and says, "Hey, I want to meet you."
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, we had lunch and then started riding bikes together.
Yep. And the rest is history.
Yeah. So that's how I met you.
Yeah.
And, I think Scott uses our bicycle time to get some guy time in, after hanging out with 5 women all day long at home and weekends.
We do have a male dog.
There you go.
Yeah, that's all about the only testosterone in our house, really. Our 10-pound dog. Yeah. So
that's funny. Well, we're 10 months or so into COVID right now.
Yeah, pretty close.
Seems like it. And I'm just thinking about the added stress that created for families, and particularly working families. So both you and Scott are working, and then all of a sudden COVID hits, and you have 4 daughters, 2 in college, right?
Yeah.
1 in middle school, 1 in high school. Is that right?
We had 2 in college, 1 in middle school, and 1 in elementary school.
Last spring, right?
Yeah.
So, but then all of a sudden, all of you are at home. Is that right?
Yes.
Did that start in March of this year?
Yeah. So I had just started my spring break from teaching, and so I was just thinking I was going to have spring break and whatever. And our oldest daughter came home, and she was also on spring break, so we had the same vacation. And so while we were both on our break, we both found out that we would not be going back in person. So then our second daughter, who was in college, and her story is a little bit interesting. Like, she was supposed to be a senior in high school, but ended up getting recruited for gymnastics at University of Arkansas. So she graduated a semester early. And we really only had a month to prepare for that because she signed over Thanksgiving break, and then we moved her into the dorm the day after Christmas. So we only had a month to prepare, like sending her off. So she, did most of her season, and then she came home, I want to say it was like a week after our oldest daughter and I were home. So yeah, it was pretty fast. Everybody just kind of started coming back to the nest. And I loved it. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I mean, at the moment, at that time, I just thought, this is great, because now they're adult. Our oldest is 22, and like, she was home and an adult. And it was kind of like, Scott and I have said, it's like we had a second chance of having our kids all home again, which was very unique. Like, we'll likely never, ever have an experience like that again.
Yeah.
So
that was a blessing.
Right? Yeah, it really was.
Yeah. Were all of you doing online education? Like, were you teaching online? Were all of your daughters going to school online? Was that what was happening?
Yes. Yep. So everybody was online at that point. My college ended up extending spring break 1 more week to give the instructors a week to figure out how we're going to move our instruction completely virtually. And so I kind of had a feeling before I even left for spring break. I would say maybe the beginning of February, I was just reading up and seeing, like, there is a high likelihood that we might be completely online. And thankfully, I also, technology and second language acquisition is one of my passions. So I'm always looking for ways to use technology and, online learning to create and sort of mimic that face-to-face learning environment. So I had already kind of prepared myself, but I had no idea what was ahead of me. I mean, no idea. Like, how much time and how much work it was going to take, really. So really, for the first time, I mean, Scott being a physician, going through medical school and all of that, he's always, and then even just working, he's always been the one that is work. And I'm telling him, like, okay, just put your phone away and stop responding to these work messages, and like, you've got to stop working. And now, I mean, he says to me, Jen, like, stop. I'm responding to student emails at midnight, and so it's just a lot of things that we weren't really prepared for.
Right.
So, and the same with the kids. I mean, they were having to adjust and do everything online and learning how to use Canvas and all the stuff that goes along with that. So it was, it's a lot of new stuff.
So what were some of the stressors that you found were unique in that situation? I mean, there was the blessing of all being together, but did that also create some unique stressors that you guys were experiencing?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like, okay, so the blessings, try to focus on the positive. Like we loved, everything shut down, right? There were no restaurants open. Nothing was open. So we loved having like family time, family dinners. I love to cook. They all love to eat. So it's a great arrangement. And we're not really a big TV family. We just don't really watch TV. But we all really got into watching The Bachelor. So you can give Scott you can razz him about that.
There we go.
But, our daughters like to watch, especially our second daughter, Claire, she likes to watch The Bachelor. So we would like sit down on the couch and watch The Bachelor. We watched The Voice. We watched Schitt's Creek. We watched, it was just kind of a way to like decompress, and since the kids couldn't really be with their friends either, it was like, we were living our best lives because we loved having everybody back home, The stressors, however, were that, the reality is, like I mentioned, I was working all the time. I was trying to make sure that my students were learning because they didn't sign up to be fully virtual, so I was feeling burdened by that, and trying to really mimic that experience of in-person learning for them. And with Scott being a physician, it's obvious the stressors that he was experiencing. So he was really, and he's on the leadership, partner with his practice. So he is, they were trying to figure out how can they change their office structure to keep the healthy kids healthy, but still see the sick kids and not get the healthy kids sick, right? Because babies need well child checks and kids need to be seen even when they're not sick. So he was carrying that burden. The stressor for me was all of the what ifs. What if this lasts longer than we think it's going to? What if the kids don't get to go back in the fall? What if, all the things, right? What if one of us gets COVID and we're one of those people on the TV that they talk about that are perfectly healthy and it ends poorly, And I would say just for me personally, the stressor of trying to reassure the little ones that we call them the bigs and the littles because we have a 5-year gap between the two sets. So the littles were the ones that, and still do, really worry about what's going to happen. They see on TV, there's 200 and some odd thousand people have died from COVID and all these images of healthcare workers that are, working around the clock. And they don't understand. They don't have like the reference point to put that into perspective, So they worry a lot about that. And so I'm trying to carry the burden of reassuring them that everything is going to be fine. And then stressed that, am I doing a good job helping my kids learn? Am I doing a good job being an educator? Am I reassuring my husband? Am I, all those things that just a lot on my mind, on everyone's mind.
Right.
I think, it's interesting. Something that I learned through the Oaks class at Vineyard is the curses, right? And so I've always been told that I'm like super mom. Scott's like, you're super mom. And my kids are like, they're like, if, your superhero is Wonder Woman because you just do it all, right? But that can be a curse because it's like, here I am, like I'm supposed to be holding it all together. And I am feeling like I am not holding it all together,
Right.
So just trying to be all things for everyone in the family is really stressful,
Right.
you know?
So I'm just thinking about not only yourself, but in your network of relationships with other women in their careers and their family life. I've certainly heard the stories of families who are together on top of each other, and after a period of time, kind of driving each other a little bit crazy, trying and getting in each other's nerves a little bit. I'm not assuming that's your situation, but I'm sure you had friends that were experiencing. I don't know. Was there a temptation to more conflict because you're kind of on top of each other all the time? Did some of your friends experience that kind of
For sure.
situation?
Yeah. And I mean, it was not all rainbows and unicorns at the Rogers house. I'm going to be honest. I mean, it wasn't always perfect, right? So, I mean, when you have people that are together all the time and you're used to having your separate time, your separate space, and everybody going to their place during the day for work, for school, for whatever, and then suddenly everybody is back together. I mean, that's a recipe for conflict. I mean, let's be honest, right? So, yeah, I mean, I have, myself personally, and then lots of friends that were saying the same thing. This is like so much togetherness. And the older kids my kids love to be home, so they weren't really crabby about not getting to see their friends. But a lot of my friends that have older kids that are either high school or they come home from college, and they're used to being able to hang out with their friends, and they can't do that. So they're crabby, and they're taking it out on their parents, and then the husbands, or the wife travels, and now suddenly they're not traveling for work, and everybody's home, and everybody's trying to work from home, and we're sharing Wi-Fi bandwidth, and it's just a lot. So yeah, it's a lot of stress and a lot of togetherness. Couple that with people, I have several friends who they were furloughed, their spouse was furloughed, or business owners that just were really, really worried. I mean, as they're watching each day go by, thinking, this is another day, and I know what that calculation is, on the ledger, and it's not going to end well. So that's really, really stressful.
Yeah,
it's really stressful.
The financial part of that as well.
Yeah.
I was reading a CDC report, and it was talking about some of the upticks in like substance abuse during COVID. It was talking about suicide ideation during COVID. It was talking about issues of acute anxiety and depression, and also dealing with things like even abuse, even domestic violence, even child abuse. And all of those things were on the uptick. In fact, most of those things were on a 26 to 40% increase.
Wow.
And this was this was one of the studies I saw that came out from the CDC on some of the impact of COVID on America, just in general. And I was just thinking about families that are facing those kinds of stressors, unique stressors. And then I think all of us have a tendency to want to, I'll speak for myself, my brain goes all the time. I've always had problems sleeping. And so I like to be able to kind of chill, shut my brain off. So there's always this draw toward, self-medicating in a way that's not so healthy. And I wonder if you have some thoughts on that in this whole situation where there's this, for people in general, there can be this draw to just self-medicate to feel better fast, however we want to talk about that. And even in this family environment, have you thought comments on any of that kind of stuff?
Yeah. A lot. So I heard someone say, or maybe it was a meme or something that said, after COVID or quarantine, people are going to be a hunk, a chunk, or a drunk. So,
I get it.
like you're home and so you can like work out or,
Right.
whatever. So you could be, a hunk when you come out of quarantine,
right.
or you can, not do that and you're a chunk, the quarantine 15, we've all heard of that. Or a drunk, you're self-medicating to like how to cope with this togetherness and stuff. So, anxiety is an issue. I mean, I heard in 2015, a 2015 study that said that 1/3 of Americans will have some sort of interaction with an anxiety disorder, either themselves or a loved one or something. And it's double in women.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so I think for women, and moms, it's really kind of, I think during this whole quarantine thing, it's kind of been like a joke, like socially acceptable, like, we're going to have, driveway happy hours and we're going to, let the kids play outside at socially distanced or whatever. And I mean, I will say myself, like there were days when I come down from teaching and I'm done at 3:00 and I'm like, when is it 5:00? Like I could really use a glass of wine right now. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's only 2:30 or 3, just because you're just on all the time, we are constantly checking in with our kids, just saying like, how are you doing? Like stress wise, emotionally, not seeing their friends, feeling, the weight and the stress. Scott has seen an uptick in kids that have had suicidal ideations and just really been feeling just desolate, like they're just at the end of themselves. So, I think that, for me personally and just a lot of my friends, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to describe this to make it make sense, but like control can be an addiction, right? You can just be like addicted to control. And during COVID and all of this, everything is so out of control. Everything. Like you can't plan, you can't like think ahead. Every day is different. And so it's that for me personally, control is like, that is my jam. That is my kryptonite. When I am stressed, I just go into like hyper focused control mode. Okay. Brene Brown calls it, what is it? Like overdoers or underdoers, like not achieving, but it'll come to me anyways. So, but basically like there's two types of people when a high anxiety or high stress situation happens. And there's the over, which is me, and you like automatically go into like planning mode and, take care mode, and you're making the lists and you're doing all the things to like make the stuff that you can control. Like I'm going to do it and I'm going to do it like amazingly well. Right. So that's one group of people. And then the other group of people are like the people that just shut down.
Right.
Like I cannot, this stress is overwhelming. I'm just going to like go to bed and bury under the covers. And that is not me, but that is a lot of people, which isn't necessarily like an addiction, but it's not a healthy behavior. I mean, neither one are those are, healthy coping mechanisms. So I think a lot of women, moms, we, have self-medicated with, virtual happy hours and, getting together. It's like, well, we don't have to work until 5, so why not, right? Well, that's fine on a Friday, but, not on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, And the other thing is like back to that control thing, like, we've seen so many people that purged so much stuff like organization and finally go, get to that storage area or that closet that you've been avoiding, and I hadn't really put two and two together about this until you asked me, and kind of said, what are some of the things that you think people have done to kind of cope during this difficult time? Right. And that is definitely something, because you can't control what's going on in the world. So like if I can get my house in order, then that's something that I can control. Mm-hmm. So have you heard of the show, The Home Edit?
I have not.
So it's this show, I guess, on Netflix. I haven't seen it, but I know who these people are, these women, and they are really popular on social media, and they are like organizing goddesses. And they put everything, like it looks really pretty. Like everything is in like rainbow order. Okay, so like Perfect. In your pantry or like whatever, it's all in the color order. So I have had several friends that have said, like, I've been, doing this so great. I've been doing this home edit and, it's so awesome. Like my pantry is all done and it looks so great. And it's all in like Roy G. Biv, and I'm like, I do not have time for that. And so, but it's this way to cope of like, as long as my pantry items are all organized and it's good, then at least that part of my life is okay.
Right.
Until your kid runs in and like grabs the orange Cheeto bag out of the orange container and then it's like, oh, I changed my mind. I want the Doritos, and takes them out of the red Dorito pack and throws the orange and the red, and then all breaks loose. So I think that need to control is something that women in general use to cope with anxiety. Because if we really start to feel the feelings of like, wow, I'm about to lose it, then you have to deal with the feelings. You know what I mean? So I don't personally have anyone that I know personally, friends or myself, that are, abusing substances, drugs, or, alcohol, yes. I don't know that it would go to the abusing level.
Right.
But certainly, eating for comfort, I think, Scott and I have done that,
Sure.
I mean, why not?
Yeah.
Right. So
I know.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned Brene Brown, and I've been a big fan of hers. I started reading her books when they first started coming out, and her work on shame has been tremendously insightful for me in my own journey, particularly in these last couple of years and all that I've gone through. But I remember her saying that shame is a universal emotion that all of us feel, and she tends to summarize it with the statement, never enough, never enough. Like, and she says men and women experience shame a little bit differently, or at least over different issues. So for your wife at home, there can be, you're never enough for your kids, or you're never enough at home or at work or in bed, or any number of issues you could name, and all those roles that you play, that underlying feeling of never enough. So I'm just thinking with COVID, with the added stresses, with many of our tendencies to wrestle with that feeling of never enough, it seems to me like it certainly could lend itself toward a perfect storm for some individuals in this difficult situation and time. But curious about how that issue of shame can play into all of these stressors you're talking about. So you're talking about, one technique for coping is controlling, but then in our efforts to control, it's like, oh, but I'm never enough, or I'm never good at, whatever you can.
Right.
So I don't know if you have some reflections on how shame plays into some of those issues.
Yeah, I have a lot of reflections about that. Because I am a recovering shame addict, like completely. And Brene Brown has completely changed my life. I mean, she's amazing. Like, one day I want to meet her because she's incredible.
Yeah.
So shame is a big thing. And I think that, you're right. Women and men experience it differently. I think for myself and, for most of the women and moms that I'm around most of the time, our biggest shame thing is how bad are we messing up our kids, right? Like, we kind of laugh about the phrase, oh, I'm not saving for college, I'm saving for my kids to pay for therapy, right? Because of all the mistakes that I make as a mom and all the ways that I mess it up, my kids are going to be needing therapy because I'm so bad, right? So I think with this scenario with COVID, because we're trying to juggle so many things and balance, like that balance is a lie. There is no such thing as balance. I mean, when people, and I'm sure you know, when people talk about, oh, marriage, it's a 50-50. It's not 50-50. I mean, it's never 50-50. There are days when it's 40-60, and I can give 40 and Scott can give 60. And then there are days when I can only give 10 and he needs to, you know what I'm saying? So it's not 50-50. There is no balance in marriage. There is no work-life balance. There is no, career mom versus stay-at-home mom, balance. Because if you're doing a good job in, dedicating all of your time and energy to your kids while you're also working, one of those areas is going to suffer. And I'm not saying that either one is bad. It's just that I think as women, we are fed this idea that you can do it all, you can have it all, you can be it all. And so during COVID, like, this is supposed to be the working mom's dream come true, because all that mommy guilt that we feel for leaving our kids every day to go to work, now suddenly we're home and we should be able, like, this is so great. But then that voice comes in, like you were saying, like, you're not enough, like you're not doing a good enough job for your work. Or if you're on a Zoom call for work, then you're ignoring your kids. And after a while, all those feelings of, like, I'm not enough, I'm not doing a good enough job, it just gets like pushed down and down and down and down, right? And so, shame grows in hidden spaces. Like, that's where it grows.
Right.
And so we don't want to talk about our feelings and say, I am really feeling defeated today because I did a really crappy job in work. I was on a Zoom call and I turned my video off and I muted myself while I helped my kid with her math. Right. And so nobody wants to admit that. I mean, and that's just a silly example that probably every working parent that's trying to work from home has done something similar during this time. Right. But I'm talking about, like, really losing it with your kids, absolutely losing your mind, I have a good friend who is probably the most patient mom I know. Honestly, she has a special needs son. And she's amazing. I mean, she is the most patient, loving, kind mom. She's the perfect mom for her son. Perfect. And we were in a group text and she sent a text and she was like, well, that's it. I've done it. I've completely blown it. I absolutely lost my shit with my kid today. She goes, I realized he had not been doing his assignments. So and she was one that, like, wrote all the assignments down on this whiteboard because he's on the spectrum and he has ADD. And so she's having to like really help him organize because this is a kid that gets services at school. Like he has someone that helps him keep his stuff together, right? And so this was back last spring when they weren't going to school at all. Like they were home completely. Right. And she's like, I just absolutely lost it. And I just took the whiteboard and I threw it across the room. And like he just sat there looking at me like, oh my gosh, who is this person? And so she texted that. And for me, I mean, honestly, I kind of felt a sense of relief because I was like, wow, I mean, okay, I'm not alone, right? Because I have done that I haven't thrown a whiteboard, but like I've been known to like get really mad and lose it when we're not all in quarantine.
Right.
You know? And so it was kind of like misery loves company, but she was really shaming herself because she lost it with her kid.
Right.
And so, just, I think for women, you know, just understanding that, like I said, shame grows in hidden places. And when you don't want to admit that you're losing it or that you've already lost it and you're not this perfect on the outside person, that then you're just going to be experiencing shame for your whole life, you know? So yeah, I don't even know. Did that really answer your question?
Yeah, that's good. I just listened to Brene this morning and on a podcast, and she was distinguishing between shame, guilt, embarrassment, and humiliation.
Oh, and I think I just listened to that podcast last week. Did she give the example about like humiliating the kid in the classroom?
I might have missed. I don't remember.
No, she gave an example, but anyways.
Anyway, she was the point being is that she was saying that, like you're saying, shame wants to hide. We don't like to talk about our feelings of shame. I've lived a life of shame, and I've had to face shame big time in the last year and a half of my life.
Yeah.
I felt shame in so many roles of my life. And yet, Brene was saying this morning, like, even though we don't want to talk about shame, nobody wants to talk about shame. We don't even like to feel shame. But one of the ways to heal shame is to talk about it, is to identify it, and even being able to, like actually distinguish between a guilt feeling versus a shame feeling versus a humiliating feeling versus a embarrassing feeling. Is actually when we name emotions, get a handle on them, identify them in our body, talk about them, and get them out, that's actually a big part of the battle of healing the shame that we're in. And so, part of the reason I wanted to just talk to you today was that I know there's a lot of women who are facing these challenges. They're probably even in their own minds asking, gosh, am I going over the limit? Am I screwing up? I'm not good enough. All of these emotions and coping strategies and the internal emotions of feeling not good enough are just they got to be bouncing around in our in the heads and minds and hearts of women. And so I just thought talking about it alone and hearing, like you felt, I'm not alone. Like just hearing that somebody else wrestled with a similar thing, it's like all of a sudden, I'm not so bad. I'm not alone, or I'm not, whatever. And so talking about it is such a huge deal. People unlocking those emotions and having context. What are some of those healthy ways that women can deal with all this stuff, like healthy coping strategies, maybe even spiritual practices that you found helpful, that might be helpful? Yeah.
So first, before I answer that, can I tell a story about myself?
Yeah,
really
please.
Quick? Okay. So, cause I don't want it to seem like, oh, I have this friend who lost her mind, but me, I was over here keeping it together. So, cause that is definitely not the case. So, all right. So little background. So Scott and I, we've had a really rough couple of years. It's been really hard for us. And our marriage has really had a lot of ups and downs, more downs in the last couple of years than ups. And honestly, quarantine and COVID was like the best thing that happened to our marriage because I don't know, it was really good. But anyways, so our 25th wedding anniversary was this past May. And 25 years is a really big deal.
Right.
I mean, like 20 years is a big deal. But we, neither one of our parents, we both came from divorced homes, and neither one of our parents even made it to 20 years. And it was just like a really big thing for us because we had just kind of like walked through this fire over the last 2 years and really almost gave up. You know all the stuff. But anyways, just that I'm just saying, that we were really struggling, So anyways, we had this vacation planned to go to Mexico for our 25th anniversary. And we were supposed to go in April. And of course that was canceled. So we rescheduled it until September. And then of course that was canceled. And so now it's rescheduled for December, but Scott's not going because he can't leave the country for a week because he'll miss 3 weeks of work.
Right. He has to
have to quarantine when he gets back. So I'm taking my bestie with me, which I mean, I love her to death. I mean, she's like my best friend. But, I really wanted to have that moment with my husband. So, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago or something, he came home and told me that he was exposed. So he trains resident physicians in his office. So they come and they train under him. And the resident that he was working with the day before was fine all day and then ended up testing positive for COVID the next day. And he found out. So he came home and I could tell that something was up because he was really serious and just like, hey, we need to talk about something, And so he told me that he's going to have to self-quarantine at home for, I don't even know how long. I can't remember at this point. But it was like, so he is going to sit or sleep in the guest room downstairs. If we were eating at the kitchen table, then he was eating like at the kitchen island. He couldn't help with any of the driving because he couldn't be in the car with other kids. He's wearing his mask at home. He's telling me that I have to wear my mask and our kids have to wear a mask in the home. And Fred, I mean, it's just like, it literally, it's just all of that like fake coping that I had been doing for the last 7 months and just like kind of pushing down like, I'm okay, we're okay, everything is okay, right? It literally, it was like putting a Mento in a Coke bottle. It just went and just like exploded. And over just something so dumb. And I was like slicing a lime to put in my Corona bottle, coping, right? And I picked up the lime and I just threw it like over by the sink, and it like hit this little sign that I have behind the sink that actually has the Bible verse on it. Knocked it over. And I was like, I am so sick of this stupid COVID. It is ruining all of my fun. And now it's taken my carpool helper. Like, that's it. That is the straw that broke the camel's back. I cannot deal. So it's like, how dumb, right? Just so dumb. But it was all of that moment of like, okay, I've held it together for everyone. And now like, and I think part of looking back, like I was really worried, like, well, what if he does get COVID? What if? And our youngest, like, she doesn't understand. When he like sat me and the two littles down to tell us that he was from across the room, that he was going to have to quarantine at home, like she went up to her room and she started crying. She had diarrhea. She didn't eat dinner. She didn't eat the whole next day. Like she was so worried.
Yeah.
that she was going to get COVID or that he was going to get it and then he's going to die. I mean, just all this stuff, you know? And so I just wanted to say that because I don't ever want to like project that like I've got it together, because I really don't. And I can lose my mind and throw stuff. That day it happened to be the lime that was supposed to go in my Corona.
Right.
That went and knocked down the Bible verse that was like telling me, you know, love is patient. I mean, whatever, right? So
exactly.
So anyway, so that, you know, that was not my proudest moment for sure.
Right.
But I will say I don't feel shame for that, because I did, you know, we've had a lot of counseling, my husband and I. And so I said to him, look, you know as well as I do, this is not about you. I'm not mad at you. I'm not angry at you. I'm just angry. I'm disappointed. I'm sad. I'm weary. And so that concept, like, name the emotions. But anger is usually all we see, you know? The anger, what's it called? The anger iceberg, right? That's all you see. But underneath that is all the other stuff.
Exactly, yeah.
And so being able to just feel the feelings and not push the feelings down. Feel the feelings, all the feelings, the good ones, the bad ones,
Right.
the ones that we're not supposed to feel.
Right.
Feel the feelings and name the feelings. Because once you've named it, you can't feel shame about it because it's not hidden.
Right.
You know?
That's good. I can imagine there's, you know, dozens, hundreds of people hearing your story and they're immediately thinking of one of those tipping points that they had, you know, where they exploded over something. I mean, I'm sure families all across the nation, right? Around the world.
Oh no, you're making me nervous
for
sharing that.
No, I'm serious. Like people have hit their tipping points on so many issues, and think about all the issues on top of COVID that have been added to the stress of, you know, the finances, the COVID issues, the election year, all of this stuff has just added so much stress and pressure. To everybody's lives. It's crazy. And so what are some spiritual practices or some healthy practices that have been really good for you, for your family,
other than throwing a lime against the kitchen sink?
Other than that. Yes.
So you talk about, like, there's this tipping point, right? So I remember this night, and it was early on when, you know, we were seeing Fauci and the whole medical team like multiple times a day giving a report, and Scott was like glued to the TV all the time, going back and forth from each channel, just trying to hear like what is the latest. And, you know, the CDC guidelines are changing and travel restrictions are changing. And I just reached this point. I was like, I can't take this anymore. This is so stressful. So I went into the laundry room and just had to walk away from the TV. So one of the things that is healthy is like turn off the news. Like just stop that. Stop, you know, the social media, all of that. And so I went into the laundry room and I put in my ear pods and just started listening to music. I love music. You talk about spiritual practices. I love worship music. I've always really felt like I can connect through worship music and prayer, and the songs really become a prayer. As much, or probably more so, than reading scripture. It just is really, you know, private, personal, powerful moment for me. So, healthy coping, you know, I can tell you what I did. I put a post on Facebook, actually, and asked people, what are some of your favorite books that you've read? Because I love reading.
Okay.
But I haven't had a lot. I mean, it seems like since we've had kids and then you're married and whatever, like we're reading books like how to parent, how to be a better parent, how to talk so your kids will listen and listen so your kids will talk, all that stuff. And I'm like, I just wanted to read for pleasure. I just wanted to like immerse myself in reading. So I just started reading like crazy. I love reading. So I was reading books. I was listening to books. When I would drive, when I would walk the dog, when I would, make dinner, do laundry, I was listening to books or reading books all the time. I think I read like 12 or 15 books just over the summer.
So were these, what type? Were they novels, self-help, just a variety of different kinds of books?
Fiction, nonfiction.
Any favorites?
Oh, well, Educated. Have you read that?
I haven't. I've got it in my library and haven't read it.
So amazing.
I've heard it's really good.
So amazing. Where the Crawdads Sing.
I haven't.
Also amazing.
I haven't read that one.
The Way It Always Was or The Way It Always Is. That's really great, too. That's fiction, but about a family that they have a little boy that is like identifies as a girl from the time he's like 5 years old. So that was really, really good because something. So yeah,
variety,
variety of books.
Who are your favorite worship people right now?
So I love Carrie Job. She's just amazing. I absolutely love her. And Natalie Grant. So I have loved Natalie Grant from the time she was like not even a really big name worship singer. And she and her husband did this thing, like a song a day keeps the crazies away on Instagram. Yeah. Have you seen that?
I haven't, but I've heard it.
It's really amazing.
I've heard that phrase,
Yeah, they sit down and she sings a worship song every day on Instagram Live. And it's like really spoken to me. So if Natalie Grant is listening to this by any...
I'm going to have to check that out.
So good. Yeah.
Nice.
I love Elevation Worship. Oh gosh. There's so many. I don't have like...
Those are some
only one
good ones.
Favorite, but yeah.
What do you do you have some conversation groups? Like you talked about being on a group text where it sounded like you could actually text stuff that you're struggling with a group. Is that a practice of yours where you actually have a little community of women that you share what you're going through with? And
so I have a group of friends that we were in small group together back, oh my gosh, like 2000. I think we started in like maybe 2002, 2003 or so. And so there's 6 of us women. And when we were in that group, Scott was in medical school, so that tells you how long ago it was. And so when we were in that group, we went to Lake of the Ozarks in the summer, the 3rd weekend of July, and we would we couldn't go very long because one of the gals, her husband is a pastor. So we had to be back on Saturday so he could preach on Sunday. And so we would go Thursday morning and stay Thursday night and Friday night and come back Saturday. Well, then that has kind of morphed as we've gotten older. We've had, lots of kids. I think we have 26 kids between all of us. And so now we've gone to Florida to like Seaside, Seacrest area the last couple years. And so 2 of them, the pastor has now since moved. He was called to a church in Tennessee, in Nashville. Another gal, she got divorced and moved to Chattanooga be near her parents. We moved north of the river. At this time, we were living in Lee Summit when we started going to this church. And the other 3 women live like in the Overland Park, Lenexa, Olathe area. Okay. So even though 4 of us live in Kansas City, like we don't really see each other that much because we have a lot of kids and all that. But Marco Polo. Are you familiar with Marco Polo?
No.
So Marco Polo. It is it's an app on your phone. It's free and it's a video. So you video yourself and you can see all the videos, of everyone. So in fact, I was like really behind on the Marco Polos and just got really caught up yesterday. But We have shared literally so much of our lives through Marco Polo.
Okay.
It's crazy. I mean, the joy, the tears. One gal, her father-in-law just passed away last Thursday. It's just that connection with people.
Yeah.
This past summer when we were in Florida was our 16th year of doing that girls'
Interesting.
weekend.
Yeah.
And so I have that group of women that are just like my rocks.
Yeah.
You know,
That's great.
We know everything about one another. We've been through births, miscarriages, adoptions. When we were in small group together and we told them we were moving Scott's grandpa into our house, and they all just looked at us like we had lost our minds because, you know, they were concerned for us. They just, so that I think, you know, for women, if you don't have that, you need to find it.
Right.
And I think women are starving for that. We want that connection with other people.
Absolutely.
So
Isolation is a monster, right? I mean, you throw in all the stresses and then you're isolated. It's going to augment any kind of negative coping strategy that's out there.
Yep.
So community, support community is huge. Well, thank you for sharing. This has been, I think, very good to just share and talk along these lines. I know that women who are listening can identify with so many different parts of your story. And I think some of the spiritual practices that you've talked about, like support community, worship music,
podcasts.
Yeah.
I love podcasts.
Reading's a huge thing for me. That's one of my avenues for spiritual growth is just reading and that discipline. So I really appreciate you taking time to share your life and your journey, and maybe just give a closing thought to people that are listening in with us today.
Oh, wow. This is like the closing thought. I think my closing thought is really just that nobody is doing anything perfectly. Nobody. And the sooner everyone, especially women, that we can just admit that, like, I'm really struggling here and I'm not doing it well and I need help. We're really bad at asking for help. Ask for help. Reach out to your friends. Pick up the phone. That's why I like the Marco Polo, because it's kind of like a phone call, but you can listen when you have time. You don't have to like pick it up right at that moment. And be there for one another. Show up. You know, Brene says that a lot. Show up for one another. And I think, you know, we're going to get through this. I don't know when. Nobody knows when.
Right.
But I think that find what, you know, spiritual practice, lean into that. If it's prayer, if it's worship music. Like I said, I hate to admit, but I'm not the greatest, like, sit down, have a great quiet time every day type of person. That doesn't work for me, but I pray a lot. I listen to a lot of worship music, and then I talk to my friends about it.
Right.
That is really helpful.
That's great.
And get out of the isolation and stop the self-talk that I'm really screwing this up.
Yes. Yeah.
Give yourself a break, I guess, is the
Right.
the take-home message. Just give yourself a break, you know.
Yeah. Excellent.
So,
well, thank you so
thanks
much,
for having
Jen.
me.
It's great to have you here. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in and listening. And stay tuned for Spirituality Adventures. We appreciate you joining us today. God bless you.
Harvey Media Production.